They thought she was just a substitute. They were wrong. The hangar at Callahan Air Training Center was buzzing with tension that morning. High-level visitors were coming, congressional delegates, generals, maybe even someone from the secretary's office. It was a day for perfection, a day where image mattered more than substance, the kind of day where everyone polished their boots twice and recited protocols like prayers. Then she walked in. Flight helmet under her arm, boots dusty from morning drills, and a calm, unreadable expression on her face. She wasn't tall, she wasn't loud, but the room changed the moment she crossed the threshold. Colonel Grayson square-jawed, proud, with a chest full of medals, spotted her immediately. His eyes narrowed. His voice rang out, sharp and mocking, slicing through the busy chatter of ground crew and pilots. "You really think this is Top Gun, Captain?" The mechanics froze. A tech sergeant holding a clipboard stopped mid-step. One of the junior pilots, Lieutenant Harrington, the golden boy of the squadron, let out a low chuckle. But Evelyn Shaw didn't flinch. She didn't explain herself, didn't offer a smile or a comeback. She just kept walking past the colonel, past the Snickers toward the F-16 waiting on the tarmac. The one meant for Major Vega, who had just twisted his ankle getting off a stairwell. Bad timing for him, divine timing for her. The colonel blinked. Maybe he thought she wouldn't dare. Maybe he assumed she'd hesitate. She didn't. She climbed the ladder, strapped in with practiced ease, and began her pre-flight checks like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Because she had. But no one here knew that. Not yet. Colonel Grayson turned to his aides, irritation in his jaw. "She's not cleared for active demo," he muttered, though there was no one left to take Vega's place, not with seconds ticking down. The formation needed 3 birds. Period. And she was already in the cockpit. He grunted. Let her go up. One screw-up, and it's on her record. The turbines roared to life. As the 3 F-16s taxied down the runway, Harrington in lead, Ramirez in anchor, and Evelyn on the left wing, no one outside the tower knew that one of those pilots had been laughed at just minutes earlier. They only saw 3 sleek jets ascending into a perfect desert sky, slicing through the blue like sharpened steel. What they didn't see was what Evelyn had carried with her into that cockpit. 35 years old, over 1,000 logged flight hours, 3 deployments overseas, 2 commendations for saving aircraft and crew during mid-air emergencies. And still, she'd spent the last 2 weeks sitting on a folding chair outside the flight control room. No assignment, no locker nameplate. Just a clipboard memo that said, "Captain Shaw standby, observe rotation." She knew what that meant. You're here, but you're not needed. And that's exactly how most of the base treated her. Not with open hostility, just invisibility. Eyes that glazed past her in briefing rooms. Lips that tightened in smirks when her name was called. She was the pilot they assumed had seen her best days. The one shuffled in from logistics. The one without a spotlight. But she didn't need one. She learned a long time ago that greatness doesn't shout. It doesn't ask for permission. It just prepares and waits for the moment when everything else falls apart. So while the others spent their time at the gym or mess hall, Evelyn calibrated flight simulators alone. She reviewed mission protocols no one asked her to read. She studied airframe diagnostics in silence, her back straight, her notes precise. Some of the younger pilots didn't even know her rank. They called her ma'am, like she was someone's retired aunt touring the base. But the jets knew. Every time she passed the hangar, her steps slowed near the F-16s. Her fingers would brush the metal, light and reverent. She didn't need to prove she belonged. She already knew she did. Now, in the air, her instincts took over. The radio was alive with Chatter Harrington calling out formations like a man born to command, Ramirez responding in clipped, confident tones. And Evelyn? She said nothing. She held her line. She adjusted micro-angles with ease. She caught the edge of Harrington's shadow across her wing and matched it like a dancer following rhythm. In the control tower, Colonel Grayson gave smug commentary to the visiting generals. "That's Harrington, top of his class. Ramirez is our rock, and that's our stand-in on the left wing. New arrival, good enough for backup." He didn't even say her name. But high above the earth, in that sky, clear, quiet, Evelyn Shaw didn't hear him. She was listening to the wind, watching the numbers, feeling the air pressure in her bones. She wasn't here to be acknowledged. She was here because she saw what needed to be done and did it. And soon, the entire base would see what a backup was truly capable of. Captain Evelyn Shaw didn't say a word not when the jet took off, not when the tower dismissed her, not even when Lieutenant Harrington's voice kept dominating the radio, barking instructions like he was already wearing a colonel's stars. But her hands knew the sky. They knew the pitch of a dive by feel, not readouts. They knew when the air felt too still unnatural, like something was about to go wrong, and at 18,000 feet, something did. It started with a flicker in her HUD, not enough to raise alarms, just a blink half a second of static. Then came the tone, not from their squadron, not from base, something foreign. A whisper on an open channel, civilian bleed-through, equipment malfunction? Her fingers moved, checking diagnostics. Everything read normal, but her gut didn't believe it. Then Harrington's voice cut through sharp and confused. What the hell was that? Evelyn's eyes shifted right. His jet dipped, just barely. Not pilot error, not wind. Instinctively, she banked slightly to maintain distance. Ramirez chimed in. Crowley, you dropped 30 feet. No, I didn't, Harrington shot back, defensive. But Evelyn already knew. He didn't do it. Something hit them. Then she saw it. A flash of white at the edge of her canopismal, fast, climbing at an insane angle. It shouldn't be there. It wasn't military. It wasn't cleared. It was a drone. A civilian drone, spiraling out of control straight into their flight path. She shouted, "Break formation now!" Too late. The drone clipped the underside of Harrington's F-16 and exploded in a burst of sparks and shrapnel. The jet lurched violently. Alarms screamed. One engine caught fire, and the nose dipped. Harrington's voice came in muffled, disoriented. "I can't control." Ramirez peeled away, trying to loop around. The base scrambled over comms. Colonel Grayson's voice cracked through the chaos. "Abort the run! Get them down, now!" Evelyn had already broken formation, her jet dove slicing through the smoke trail. Harrington's aircraft was losing altitude fast, spiraling, unstable. His comms were fading, panic rising in his voice. She didn't hesitate. She dropped beneath him, aligning her jet directly under his burning one. "Lieutenant O, not touch the throttle. Let go." No response. "Let go. Now." Still nothing. He was probably trying to fight it, trying to correct something that couldn't be corrected. Flames were leaking along his left fuselage. Panels were gone. Hydraulics blown. Evelyn made a choice. She dropped 10 more feet and banked hard right. Her entire body shifted with the G-force as she positioned herself beneath his trajectory, not to catch him, but to guide him. The control tower went silent. Colonel Grayson stopped talking mid-sentence. Everyone watching, tech crew, generals, visitors, froze. No one had trained for this. This wasn't in the manuals. It wasn't something you simulate. But Evelyn wasn't reading a book. She was reading the sky. Her fingers danced across controls, adjusting her descent to match his. She watched his wobble, measured his fall, calculated the wind shifts. Her stabilizer brushed under his failing wing like a scaffold holding up a crumbling wall. Harrington's voice, barely there, whispered, "Brooks, what are you doing?" She didn't correct him. He didn't even know her name. "I've got you, just keep your hands off the stick." Below them, the emergency runway had been cleared. Fire crews in position. Medical response teams waiting, jaws clenched. Her jet steadied his descent minute by minute, inch by inch. One wrong nudge, and both of them would be gone. At 3,000 feet, she adjusted her pitch. The second engine on his jet sputtered. She flared, realigned, flared again, her teeth clenched, her breath steady. His plane dropped into the emergency glide slope and, finally, with a sickening bounce and a streak of fire retardant, foam landed. Alive. She didn't even land right away. She circled twice until the tower confirmed he was breathing, moving, conscious. Only then did she bring her bird down. When she stepped out, the tarmac was strangely quiet. No one clapped. No one cheered. Because no one could process what they'd just seen. She walked past the emergency crews, her suit soaked with sweat, helmet in hand, her boots trailing black dust across the hangar floor. And behind her, the entire narrative of the substitute pilot lay smoldering in the desert heat. No one looked at her the same way again, but she didn't look at them at all. Inside the debriefing hall, the air was like lead. The VIP guests had returned to their seats. The giant screen on the far wall was replaying aerial drone footage of the descent. Frame by frame, Evelyn Shaw's jet gliding beneath the crippled fighter, guiding it like a guardian angel through columns of smoke. No one spoke. Not the generals. Not the aides. Not Colonel Grayson. He stood stiff near the side of the room, hands clasped too tightly behind his back, jaw clenched, eyes locked forward. The flush on his face wasn't from heat, it was something deeper. Captain Evelyn Shaw stood near the back, her flight suit unzipped halfway, sweat-streaked, helmet tucked beneath her arm. She didn't sit, she didn't shift. She simply stood, her posture calm, her gaze even. She had the same expression now as she did in the cockpit, quiet, focused, unshaken. Then General Wilcox stepped forward, commander of Air Mobility Operations, a man whose name carried weight from coast to coast. He had been silent since the incident, but now his voice cut through the room. "Which one of you assigned her to standby?" No one answered. Grayson blinked, then stepped slightly forward. "Captain Shaw was recently reassigned, sir. I didn't have full evaluations at the time rotation orders were issued." Wilcox's eyes never left him. Yet she logged over 1,000 hours, 3 active zone extractions, landed a fighter during a sandstorm with a seized rudder. "That's all in her record," he added, voice low. "And she was grounded." Grayson's throat clicked. "I made a judgment call based on available personnel and mission continuity." Wilcox didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His next sentence hit harder than any shouted reprimand. "That judgment nearly cost you 2 pilots, a jet, and a congressional PR disaster." Then he turned slowly toward Evelyn. She corrected it. Silence. Wilcox pointed to the screen, which showed the final, heart-stopping sequence. Her jet, sliding underneath Harrington's burning bird. Perfect alignment. Steel under pressure. He squinted slightly. That final vector, that wasn't textbook. That wasn't simulation precision. That was instinct. That was muscle memory. You don't get that from standby status. He took a step closer. "Captain, who taught you that maneuver?" Evelyn's voice was calm, clear. "My father, sir, Colonel Adrian Shaw. He flew with the 3003rd Tactical Fighter Squadron during Operation Desert Spear." The room shifted. Several heads turned. Even the younger officers recognized that name, a legend in air combat circles. A pilot whose methods were studied at the academy, whose name lived in training manuals, plaques, memorial walls. Now that name echoed again through the actions of his daughter. "He used to say," Evelyn continued quietly, "you don't wait for orders when lives are on the line. You act. You act because you can." General Wilcox nodded slowly. Another general leaned over to whisper something. A third scribbled notes. Colonel Grayson, still rigid at the edge of the room, couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Wilcox turned to him. "I want a full commendation report. I want to know why she wasn't cleared for lead, and I want that answer in writing." Grayson gave a hollow nod. Evelyn didn't react. She didn't gloat, didn't even blink. Her silence filled the space between them like gravity, the kind of stillness that doesn't beg for recognition because it already commands it. As the generals began to leave one by one, conversations resumed in hushed tones. Debriefing aides collected notes. Someone muted the looping drone footage. Evelyn didn't move. Then, only one person remained. Colonel Grayson. He walked toward her slowly, his boots scuffing slightly against the floor. The arrogance, the confident posture he'd worn like a second uniform since she'd arrived was gone. When he stopped just a few feet from her, his eyes dropped to the floor before they rose to meet hers. "You saved his life," he said quietly. "Yes, sir," she replied. Nothing more. A pause. Then, in a voice no one had ever heard from him, soft, almost human. "Dismissed, Captain." She nodded once, then turned and walked out, leaving him in the silence he had created for himself. The base didn't change overnight. No banners, no ceremony, no standing ovation. Just something quiet, something subtle, like a current shifting deep under the surface. Captain Evelyn Shaw returned to her routine as if nothing had happened. She still showed up early, still calibrated her own systems, still stayed behind after flight sims to help the junior techs recalibrate sensors or patch software glitches. But now, when she walked into the ready room, the room didn't skip a beat. It fell in behind her. The same pilots who once looked through her now watched how she moved, how she folded her checklists, how she strapped her boots. The ones who used to smirk during her silent note-taking now paused mid-sentence to ask questions, real ones, about maneuvering in turbulence, about energy bleed during combat turns, about instinct. And she answered when needed, short, precise, humble. Lieutenant Harrington, who had once chuckled as she passed the hangar, returned to flight duty 3 weeks later. He never mentioned the incident, not in mess hall banter, not in drills, not even in casual chat with the others. But something in him had shifted. He trained harder, he spoke less, and every time Evelyn entered the hangar, his eyes followed her not with fear, not with awe, but with a wordless gratitude that men like him didn't know how to express. The new rotation list came out on a Friday. Her name was at the top. No footnotes, no conditions, no asterisks. Lead pilot, attached briefing packet, advanced sim time, flight authority, full clearance on all Callahan-based aircraft. Squadron, assigned. The signature wasn't Grayson's. It came from higher. She didn't say a word about it. She didn't need to. In the quiet of her locker, behind the same flight gloves and folded shirts, she slipped a photograph, a black and white print, worn at the corners. Her father, Colonel Evelyn Shaw, leaning against the nose of an old F-4 Phantom, sun in his eyes, arms crossed, a half-smile that said everything and nothing. No frame, no caption, just memory. One morning, not long after, a folded note appeared under her door. No envelope, no signature, just handwriting, steady and clean. We were wrong. You didn't fly like one of the best. You flew like the only one who could. She pinned it behind the photo. Never mentioned it again. Some called what she did impossible, catching a wounded fighter jet mid-air, guiding it to safety with no support, no orders, no recognition. But to her, it wasn't heroism. It was duty. She hadn't risen to the moment. She was the moment. Because when radios failed, when command froze, when pride collided with reality, she didn't hesitate. She led. When she passed through the hangar now, junior pilots straightened unconsciously. Not out of fear, out of something deeper, respect, earned, not awarded. There were no speeches about her, no press releases, but every manual at Langley and Nellis quietly updated their emergency protocols. A new maneuver was entered in simulation software under a placeholder name, Brooks Roll. She never called it that. To her, it was just doing what needed to be done. So next time you see someone quietly preparing, staying late, doing the unnoticed work, remember, they may not wear their greatness out loud. They may not demand the spotlight. But when it counts, when everything's on the line, they won't ask for permission. They'll become the reason others make it home. Because dignity doesn't make a scene, it simply walks in and lets the truth speak for itself.